Hello, hello. It is Charisse with the Spiritual Growth Forum, and I am here with Christine. Hello, Christine. Christine is an intuitive and Ayurvedic educator who helps seekers access their divine connection and live in alignment and harmony. Doesn't that sound yummy? With over 25 years of experience blending ancient Ayurvedic wisdom, intuitive coaching, and a deep understanding of the human soul, Christine creates a sacred space for profound self-discovery and transformation. Understanding your doshas, which I can't wait to find out about them, the unique mind-body constitution that expresses your physical, mental, and emotional states. She provides insights into your energetic blueprint. Gaining an understanding of your doshas is like having your self-owner's manual, and don't we all want one of them, which allows you to finally embrace all aspects of you rather than apologizing. So welcome. I am so excited to talk to you today.
Good.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how you became interested in doshas and Ayurveda medicine, and what's up with all of this stuff. Talk to me.
Well, I was introduced to Ayurveda at the tender age of 23. And I had a client, I was a consultant in the natural food industry, and maybe I was a little bit older, maybe I was 25. And one of my clients was Maharishi Ayurveda, which is one of the largest Ayurveda companies in the United States. And they were the original company that brought over all the Ayurvedic doctors and brought the ancient wisdom from India to the United States. So they had a network of practitioners that you could visit and, get healing from. And I was so lucky. I lived in Santa Rosa, and my doctor and eventual mentor was Dr. Helen Thomas. And so I've had Ayurveda in my life, sort of like a co-processing, just because I understood doshas, I could understand people very readily and listen to the way that they spoke to me, and also for me to be able to speak to them in a way that they could understand me.
Oh, that sounds so interesting. So tell me a little bit more about you, though. Like, how did you end up working in that kind of field back in your 20s even? Like, tell me the story.
The work that I'm doing now, I didn't really have the depth and the understanding, because back then I was vibrantly healthy. So, of course, everything that you're reading in the system, you're like, yeah, check, okay, yeah. And it wasn't until I really came up against my own health issues in my 50s that I really understood the power of the system and of the wisdom. So I started to apply everything that I'd known for a long time, but my genetics caught up with me.
Sometimes that happens, right? Especially if you are one of the unlucky ones that's like clearing karmic crap from generations past.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, right over here. That was in my 40s though. So I'm like, really? I had to be the lucky one? Okay, I'll take it. But gosh almighty.
I think, my path on that conversation probably started in my late 30s, like 38, 42. So I lost my husband at the age of 42. So I raised my kids from when they were 10 and 8 until one graduated from college and the other one's got 2 semesters left.
I'm sorry for your loss, but yeah, sometimes life is weird, isn't it? It just kind of picks us like, okay, you're going to do this, and then you're going to do this, and then you're going to do this.
Well, I always say that God always gives us the challenges that we need in our lives in order to test our own resiliency and understand that we're not a victim of it, but that we get to understand what the lesson is. And so I feel like all the things that have happened to me since his death have really been those life lessons that I get to go now and share with other people to help them out of their situation.
Mm-hmm. I love that. super important. So tell me a little bit about, because I know people are probably thinking, okay, so what are these words that they're using? So I know a little bit about Ayurvedic medicine, but tell me a little bit about that from your perspective. Like, what is that?
Ayurveda is the oldest health medical system on the planet. It's over 5,000 years old, and everything that we know in ancient healthcare, like Chinese medicine, is a derivative of Ayurveda. Ayurveda was the original framework that the rishis made observations about people, and they did that by observing them behaviorally, but also by the pulse. So, in Chinese medicine, they take your pulse. They're reading all the systems in your body. That's true of Ayurveda. But the other thing that Ayurveda gives us is it tells us our doshas, which is the way our nervous system expresses itself through the pulse. So you've probably heard of Vata, Pitta, Kapha, right? That's your constitution. That's the pattern in which your nervous system is beating through your body, and it then becomes the expression of how you show up in the world and how you perceive the world.
Okay. So tell me a little bit more about maybe what the doshas are. I have questions.
Okay. Well, we have 3 doshas. So we all have 3 doshas. And you might have heard somebody say, "Oh, I'm a Vata, or I'm a Pitta, or I'm a Kapha." Well, to just be a monolithic dosha, that's like less than 5% of the population. Most of us are an expression of 2 and possibly 3. If you're tridoshic, then that's less than 5% of the population. Everybody mostly is primarily 2 doshas. So Vata is like wind and air. It tends to be dry. It's in the elemental aspect of Ayurveda. It's movement. It's this person who's a Vata person tends to be very creative, juxtapose their solutions of how they look in the world. They tend to be, when they're out of balance, they tend to be anxious and they worry and they're about perfection and they have a hard time grounding. This person is one of those marketing geniuses that you meet that goes, "Oh, blah 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 name," and it's like this most fantastic name that just only Vatas can really give you, right? A Pitta is somebody. The element is fire, and it's about transformation, and it's related to your digestion. So the thing about Pittas, by their nature, they tend to be leaders. They tend to just by default, you can think of those types of people that that just sort of show up and then they take over and then they do their thing and they're all creative. Well, the problem with Pitta is when they're hungry or they're out of balance or there's too much fire, they can be very biting, very dismissive, condescending. When they're hungry, they get very hangry. That's a Pitta.
Okay.
And
cool.
A Kapha is somebody who, by their nature, is very sweet and kind and loving, and they just want to do everything for you because that's how they show. They're very relational, and in Ayurveda, they are structure. They're the bones and the muscles of your body. They hold Vata and Pitta's ideas. They manifest them into the physical world.
Cool.
So now that you sort of have a broad definition of all of those doshas, when you go and take a test, it'll tell you, "Oh, I'm Vata Pitta," or "I'm Kapha Pitta," or Pitta Vata, and it matters the percentage and the relationship. Like a Pitta Kapha is very different than a Kapha Pitta, even though they have the same dosha ingredients. Their constitutions are flipped. And how those 2 people speak in the world, how they show up, the way that they request things is very, very different.
Interesting. Cool. Where do I go to take the test? That's my next question, right? Like, do you have that on your site, or do you have a recommended one that you like?
You can go on any Ayurvedic site and take a test. And there's broad generalizations of what they say. Like if you get a test that gives you a test and says you're only one dosha, that's not a test that's very accurate.
I mean, unless you're a unicorn.
Right. Unless you're a unicorn, which
Absolutely.
I like to think that I am, but I'm still by dosha. So
I have a feeling I'm probably all three, because in any of those personality ones where if they show you like the range of anything, I'm always like right in the middle, like
right.
dead on in the middle.
I could see that you're tridishic, but I also think that you're predominantly kapha and you're probably pitta. That's just by looking at your framework and how you interact with me. You lead with kindness and love and generosity. So that is not the nature of pitta. Pitta is demanding, has a super high standard of performance, and if you aren't meeting it, you're going to know about it if they're imbalanced. I like to consider myself a recovering pitta.
I love that. Recovering pitta.
Because when my kids were little, my youngest son is now, almost 25. And he told me, you don't know what it's like to be your kid. You have this standard of operation in the world that most people, Mom, they don't care that much. And, and being your son, sometimes it's really hard for me to keep up with you, because he's a kapha pitta and I'm a pitta kapha. So how he operates in the world is much kinder and gentler than me being demanding and grumpy, especially when I don't eat.
Well, yeah. I think, yeah. I could never be one of those people that never eats, that like forgets to eat. That is not I don't know if you can tell that I'm like healthy weight.
I can tell that you're very healthy.
I could never, ever stop eating on purpose, or like accidentally stop eating. Like, I don't understand that word. Like,
Right.
You hear like Angelina Jolie, it's like, well, I just forgot to eat for a week and I dropped 20 pounds. I'm like, that is not a me thing. But anyways.
Well, that's because she's Vata. She's tall and lanky and skinny. And we know she's highly creative because she's an artist. Vatas forget to eat. But because Vatas are made of air, right? And in the body, they're about motion. And so a lot of times imbalanced Vatas are never grounded in their body. So they forget a lot of times. That's why Vatas need kapha people, because kapha people bring their creative ideas into the physical world.
Interesting. Yeah. So that's kind of brings us to the next question is like, how does knowing this information help us to transform our lives, to make it better, to fit into things a little better?
You know how we are always externally looking for validation? Like we're asking ourselves, is that the right way? Did I do the right thing? Should I make this decision? Well, when we're little, when we're kids, babies, 3, 5, 7, we live in the resonance of the divine, right? That's when people are saying, would you just calm down? Would you, just sit down? Oh my God, you're too sensitive. You are connected to the divine when you're young. But somewhere along the way, as we were growing up, somebody said to us just that, oh, you're too sensitive, get over yourself, or, oh my gosh, you're too bossy, get over yourself. And then the Vata, of course, is floating around all the time. And would you just sit down? And in those moments, we have an adult, a parent, a grandparent, somebody from church, somewhere, some socialization that says to us, this is not how it is. You do not understand what is happening here. Let me tell you as the adult, this is what you're seeing and this is what you're feeling. And at that moment, we give up our power. We start to defer because we know intuitively like what that feels like, because we were born into that and it was nurtured in us until it was stripped away so that we could fit into society. So the thing about your doshas, it is the true expression of how nature designed you. It is the rhythm and the fullness of how God saw you to be on the planet, without any, it's that whole thing of nature versus nurture. right? Nature tells us how we're fully expressed, and that's in our doshas. So once we understand our doshas and we understand how we perceive the world, how we lean into the world, it gives us that part of ourselves that got stripped away. And so now our body somatically starts telling us yes, no, right, wrong, good, bad. Where before having this wisdom and this knowledge and this understanding, you're constantly looking outside yourself all the time. Is that right? Did I do that right? Can you tell me, did I do it right? You're constantly asking people, seeking for outward validation. So doshas give you the opportunity to have inward wisdom it comes from your own brilliance, your own knowingness, the way that you were designed. And we get so disconnected from that. So once you get that, the great thing is there's a whole manual from Ayurveda that says, hey, there's a whole list of foods that love you. There's a whole list of foods that you shouldn't eat. Here are some herbs to help support your alignment, right? So much of the time we grow up eating things that we're actually allergic to, that actually don't benefit our energetic field. Because food is, when we talk about us, we are a frequency and vibration. And so when we're eating food that doesn't support the design of our nervous system, that's where we have allergic reactions, we get inflammation, we get, a foggy head or headaches, our bodies ache. That's food. That's the wrong food for you. Might be okay for your spouse, but it isn't designed for you. So Ayurveda has all these amazing tools that you get to tap into once you understand your doshas.
Doshas, yes, because very few of us are just one.
Right.
Most of us are more.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's interesting. And so I would assume then that the different percentages affect what things are, like someone who's two people that are two, but one is more one and one is more the other, they're going to have different things that they are encouraged to eat or not supposed to eat.
Right.
And then the people who are just singletons, the unicorns, are completely different again, right?
Right. So let me give you an example. So I'm 50% pitta, 30% kapha, and 20% vata. My son is 50% kapha, 30% pitta, and 20% vata. So we can eat the same kinds of foods. He loves spicy food. Well, that's something that's good for kapha because it helps their energy. But me, I can't eat spicy food because I'm more pitta, and so it just gets me more hot and bothered.
Makes you all wound up.
Yeah, my digestion just gets sort of cranky. Where he can eat a lot of that very spicy food, and he's feeling like, yeah, I'm good, I'm okay. And then our nature is, he leads with kindness and generosity and always checking in. Hey, mom, da da da. Hey, mom, and I'm sort of like demanding, Koji, da 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 da. Like I make the demanding request and he makes the kind request. That's why your doshas are important, even though many Ayurvedic companies will say, oh, if you're a pitta kapha or you're a kapha pitta, it doesn't matter. But in my experience, it does.
It actually does. Yeah, it's funny how that works, right? Like sometimes you'll get people that don't want to hurt people's feelings when they're trying to deliver news, and they're like, "Oh, it really won't impact you at all, but here's some information." Meanwhile, the actual practitioners in the ground are like, "Will you please stop telling people that it's not important because it's really important?"
Right. And that actually is a pitta. That's a pitta communication. So pittas love information. So I think you and I have the same kinds of constitutions. So when you notice you and I are talking, we pass information between us fairly readily and easily and quickly because we have that constitution, that mind. But we also are a kapha. So being kind and loving and generous also feeds our soul because we are made up of that energetic frequency. We appreciate people who lead that way. But we also don't get easily offended if someone's really direct and information oriented.
Which is, yeah, like, but I'm sure there are other combinations that would get offended from that, right?
Right. So like you're a vata and you're out of balance and you're sort of bouncing off the wall and you can't complete a thought. That drives a kapha crazy. Kaphas are like, okay, well, what's the rest of what come on, like give me the rest of it. But that vata is now off into their third thought idea and they've never finished the first two. Where a pitta would have that same communication and they would just tell the vata, what the heck are you talking about? But the kapha person would not say anything because they wouldn't want to hurt their feelings.
I love that. I love that. So Seema actually asked a really good question. Are we always the same doshas through our lifetime, or can we switch them, or?
No. So what happens when the sperm and the egg meet? We have that flash of life, of light, right? Boom. And at the moment that connection is made, those are your doshas. It's called your prakriti. It's the origination of you, right?
Okay.
But as we we grow and then we're in life and we have all these environmental factors or emotional factors coming, we tend to get out of balance of our prakriti. And that's called your vakruti. Your vakruti is the instant you take the snapshot right now, and it tells you how out of balance you are. So we call that imbalance because we're always trying to get back to our original nature. So Ayurveda is mainly prescribed for health to keep the optimal health frequency. And over the years, I have been in many communication courses, and I have made this connection about how we speak, how we show up, and the way that it impacts us. So I now use doshas sort of like for people who do human design. It's not as tight as human design, but they're good macro levers for you to understand who you're speaking to and who's speaking to me. For instance, somebody that's very pitta, very driven, very demanding, very short, very curt, really rubs me the wrong way. Because remember, I'm a recovering pitta. But I have to understand that's an imbalanced pitta that's talking to me. And all of the things that are rubbing me wrong, they just don't even realize that they're communicating that way. So I now have the ability to sort of step out and step back and give them some latitude to be able to express themselves that way. Also knowing that that person's a pitta, I know that if I use incomplete thoughts or, kind, considerate kapha dialogue, that it'll drive that imbalanced pitta crazy. So I know that I need to speak to them in a very direct, forceful manner because that's how they process the best.
Interesting.
So this really helps when you're counseling or you're a team leader, right? Like if you could sort of not have everybody take the test, but you can tell by somebody's physicality, their stature, their nature, their mannerisms. You can then, as a team lead, be able to, or a family member, be able to speak to their listening. So I have used doshas as a way to give people tools so that they can create more harmony and productivity in their relationships.
Interesting. So you mentioned, when people are out of balance versus in balance. How can you tell when someone is out of balance with their doshas? And then I have a follow-up question, which is, how do you get back into balance? So
right. So there's the duality of dosha definitions, right? So like if you're a vata, remember I said you're highly creative, you tend to have these great, amazing ideas, juxtaposing solutions. But when a vata is out of balance, they worry, they become anxious, they can become paralyzed because they think of perfection. They tend not to trust people. right? And we, just in that definition, we tend to make ourselves bad and wrong for having those negative qualities. But the great thing and the freedom around doshas is that you get to understand that you're not making anything up. You're not conjuring something up. That really is the expression of your nervous system showing you that you're imbalanced. Right? So a pitta, who is a leader and, trusts people and can delegate easily, and, they can, when they're hungry or they're out of balance or their digestion is too hot, can be, very curt and like they don't see you. They tend to run over you, right? So for pittas, it's really hard because, society, and I'm just speaking from my own experience, pittas don't understand that the world does not operate like them. Because in America, you are given lots of kudos for having that kind of abrasive, tactless mentality, because that's how the society is. But let's say you have a teammate or your child. I had this as an experience with a client. He said that he always felt like his dad never got him, like he never saw him, because he led the world with being a kapha, and his dad was a lot of pitta. And so a lot of times he just never felt seen or heard or acknowledged, where his siblings were very pitta. And so his dad had a stronger relationship with them than they did with him. And he still holds that, in his story, and the pain of being a child. So what this does as a parent, it gives you the ability to see who your children are, to see who your mate is. And when all of you have those tools where you can work together and understand where the bridge is in the language and how to approach, you can see that it's flourishing, right? So how do you know you're in balance? You look at the doshas and you see the negative aspects. And when you are experiencing them, then the way you bring them back into balance is you go to that food list I told you about that's out there, and you start eating vata pacifying, pitta pacifying, or kapha pacifying foods. Pacifying meaning that you're out of balance and you need food, energy, the frequency of that food to bring you in alignment to your prakriti.
Okay, so it's very, very diet specific then, right?
Well, the biological nature of who we are, being organic beings, is food. In Ayurveda, food is medicine, just like in Chinese. Acupuncture, food is medicine, herbs are medicine.
Yeah, which makes sense, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I don't care how processed it is. I don't care what kind of form it comes in, pill, shot, whatever. It's all derived from food. At the end of the day, whether that food is good for you particularly or bad for you particularly, it's an organic matter of some kind.
And the thing to remember is that food is a frequency, and we are of a vibrational nature. So what we're trying to do is to find foods that match our frequency versus foods that don't. And when we eat foods that aren't in alignment, that's when we get inflammation, disease, all those terrible experiences we have of achy joints or a headache or like that. That's your body's way of telling you, hey, you're eating stuff that I don't like. You're eating stuff that isn't good for my nature. But, we were never brought up that way. We don't know that.
We don't know until we know, right?
Right. And so I've created this whole conversation to try and give people the tools so that they're more empowered.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about, I'm nosy. Tell me a little. I know. Tell me a little bit about maybe some aha moments that clients had, or some experiences that you've had with clients when it comes to when they realize that, oh my word, I am this person and I don't want to be the unbalanced version of that. And how do I get out of that? And,
experiences. Let's see. I had a friend who was putting on a retreat, and she was just like bouncing off the walls. Like she just could not, and it was raining, so it was cold. It was winter. And she was just talking, a million miles a second. And I just said, Maggie, you need to eat some kapha food, girl. You need to get grounded. And she's like, what? And I said, kapha, you need kapha food. You need something that will ground you to the earth because you are flying up in the ethers. And she had no idea what that was. And that's what brought my own realization that, because I just had always used it since I knew about it, since I was 23. It's always been co-processing in my brain. And that's what brought me forward to start talking about it and teaching it, because I think it's so powerful and useful for people. And I think, like my son, he's very pitta. My older son, very pitta. He's pitta kapha, same constitution, same dosha makeup. And he's my biggest teacher and my hardest lesson.
It's funny how that works, isn't it? Like,
right. And
I'm a kid.
we're so alike. We are so alike that it really took me a long time to go, wait, that's just his nature. He's not acting or being that way to get me or to spite me or whatever. No, that's just the way he's wired. So now we took a break. He took a break from me for about 3 years. And we've come back together. And now I just see like, oh, he's just expressing how he is. That conversation has nothing to do with me, where I used to just take it super personally. So anyway, is that a good example?
I think so, yeah. So, for example, let's play with Angelina again, because that poor woman is like, a bit of a mess. What would you say would be what would you say would be things that you would recommend for someone like that who was maybe out of balance for whatever reason?
Right. So Angelina, like we would take her pulses and identify what her prakriti is, and then be able to then take her pulses and find out where her imbalance is. So most of the time people have a vata imbalance, meaning because vata is the motion and the air in your body. If your vata is not working, you basically be dead, because you need to have air in the system to make everything move along.
Okay.
So I don't know what I don't really study Angelina, but I would say that she looks like she probably is vegetarian just by her nature. She probably doesn't eat a lot of food. So to help balance her out, there would be like certain herbs that she would take, or aromatherapy that she might smell or wear on her body. And eat more grounding foods. That grounding foods like say, root foods are grounding. Like that's really good for a vata, but it's terrible for a kapha. Because kaphas are already heavy and dense just by their nature, because they provide structure. And when you think about it in the ethereal, they provide the container for ideas to grow. So when kaphas, their worst time is the winter, because it's slow, it's cold. They like tend to want to watch a lot of TV or just to be hanging out, not doing much. So for a kapha to eat potatoes and carrots or any kind of root vegetables, it makes them more stuck. But if you add a little herbs to it, right? You add a little spice, you add a little pepper or a little cayenne with those root vegetables, it wouldn't be as bad as if you just ate it with butter or had it in a soup. So that's the chemistry in the kitchen is super important.
I find that fascinating. So really, if that was the case, you would probably want to have a spring mix garden center somewhere in your kitchen where you could just pluck fresh herbs and herbs and lettuces and things.
Well, I mean, like if you're going to have that soup as a kapha, if you're going to have that soup, you're going to put different spices in it. You might put celery which is, light, or spinach or bok choy or something else inside
Okay.
that than just eating root vegetables.
Interesting, hey? Like, it's so cool to think about how entwined food is to our energy. And yet it makes total sense when
Well,
you
I
think
mean,
of it.
when we talk about healing in general, right? Healing comes from the awareness of wholeness.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you
Absolutely.
understand your doshas and you understand your energetic makeup and your frequency, you're regaining your wholeness, your wisdom, your connection through your breath to the divine. I mean, and there's a whole other aspect of Ayurveda that talks about your connection to spirit, and then also to your chart. In Western means we call it astrology. In Ayurveda, we call it your Yodish chart.
Okay,
So,
cool.
so there's many aspects of Ayurveda that I can't get in here right now. But one of the things that I invite anybody who wants to really learn to understand that it's a highly complex system,
It sounds like it.
and don't get discouraged. Like, if all you get is the food list and you just get to look at the food list, like I had a couple clients go, "Oh my gosh, we're all three in different combinations. How are we going to adopt this?" And I said, "Well, take 5 ingredients that might be useful for all your doshas. Because the parents were a set, and then their kids were a mixture of their sets. And so I just said, take 5 ingredients that you can put together to make a meal, and see how that feels."
See how that feels.
And the one thing is, when you start eating in alignment to your doshic makeup, you feel the difference. You feel like you ate something so efficacious for you that there's no downtime in processing. Like, a lot of times you'll eat something, you're like, "Oh, that's like in the pit of my stomach, and it's gonna take forever to digest." When you eat foods that are in alignment to your dosha, you're like, "Yes, thank you very much. I feel really, really good."
I just have kind of a side note for probably a lot of our viewers. Um, if you're on your spiritual journey and you realize that foods that you used to eat are no longer agreeing with you,
Yeah.
I would guess, based on this conversation, that it's a lot less about, suddenly you can't have them because you're on your spiritual journey, and more that you're coming into alignment with your doshas and you're paying attention to it. Is
Right.
that a fair assessment?
Yes. And if you understand also that foods have certain frequencies, and as you're sort of unveiling, taking all the layers off, your frequency gets higher. So, like, for my instance, my example is, I love potato chips. Like, just love, love, love them. No matter what, I always have to have them, and they're so bad for me. Like, they're so bad for me.
They're so bad for everybody, let's be honest.
True, true, true. And I used to joke, like, I never met a potato I didn't like. I could eat them in all different forms. There was just something for me emotionally that I was connected to having potatoes. And then I did some life regression work about this boy who was bullied. He was bullied throughout his life. And when I became aware of that lifetime and how he was bullied, I immediately lost my craving for potatoes. And then after eating those potatoes, I would eat a potato. It just would not satisfy me in the same way. So I still love potatoes, but not to the degree that I did before I had that awareness.
It's cool how all of the things are all connected, isn't it? Like, we don't
Yeah.
even realize just
Well,
how connected they all are.
when we talk about our chakras, like, that's also in Ayurveda, but when we talk about our chakras and those centers in our body that are spinning energetically, they're spinning in frequency. They're spinning in frequency. And as we become clearer and we heal ourselves, that frequency gets higher and higher. That's why when you're doing work, a lot of times people will find that they don't have the same friends that they used to, or a family member that used to they could tolerate. They just can't. It's a vibrational mismatch.
Yeah.
And
or
then
people that you used to not be able to stand that suddenly you're like, you're my best friend in the whole world.
yeah, because you can understand each other, right?
Yeah.
So our whole path on the planet is to have ascension. And while we might have that through our egoic mind, our rational analytical mind, that might be clear, there's all this other stuff that's happening, which is your vibration. And we can't feel our vibration, but other people feel it. That's why you now are suddenly a match with somebody that you weren't before.
Yeah.
Right? So
cool, isn't it? So cool. So tell me a little bit about your process when you're working with someone. What does that look like?
Well, we do the dosha test. We get back the results, and then I go through their makeup, and while the report is there and it's giving you sort of an outline, I actually go through and have it be more visceral for you. And inside that conversation and the explanation, there are a lot of aha moments, like, oh, that's why I do that. Oh, that's why that's come up. And then because I'm an intuitive, a lot of times things will come out in our conversation, or there'll be a download where they may be stuck. And so that conversation sort of, introduces itself, so that by the time we're done, there is a deep clearing, and you are now have the tools to go and experiment.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So you start with food and then you move into, I'm assuming, herbals and things like that, or is that all kind of one?
Well, I am not a counselor, and I'm not an Ayurvedic doctor, so I can't prescribe those things. I can only suggest based on, as far as the herbs, I can only suggest things based on the conversation or symptoms you may be having. I can, direct you to, well, you might check this out, or you might, and I do muscle testing and pendulum work.
Cool. That is awesome.
Yeah. So
interesting, right?
You get to walk away with a little bit of the lists, to be able to. And then I continue to do counseling with people who want to really master their doshas in the sense of communication, and using it as a tool to work inside either a team or your family.
Kind of wild. I like it. Okay, so if someone wanted to work with you, what does that look like?
Well, they can do a one-off of just doing a dosha reading, or they can sign up for a package and do communication, and they want to, enroll their family so that we get all of their profiles. We do that, and then it's the fees are based on how many sessions and how many family members. So if you have 4 family members, it's one price, and then if you have more, we just have to add a little onto that. But it's really good for parents, right? Because if you have a diverse set of children who you either have full alignment to, or you have a challenging child, or sometimes people will say problematic. It's problematic. It's just because you don't understand how they're wired. But once you can get that, and you understand how you speak into the world, and you understand what the considerations are as you're talking to that child, or how you're presenting, life becomes a lot easier.
Funny how that works, isn't it?
Yeah.
I would imagine kids, spouses, coworkers, employers, employees, all of those relationships would be deeply impacted.
Yeah. Cool. And I met a group of sisters, and I was doing a fair, and I, took their pulses, and I said, oh, you're this, you're this, you're this. And they're like, well, what does that mean? And, I told them, and one of the sisters says, that's why you are so mean to me. Because she was a pitta kapha. That's why you're so mean to me. And she was a kapha vata. So she was a very creative, kind, relational person. And they used to always say to her, you're so sensitive, just get over yourself. Why do you have to be so sensitive? But just that little interlude, it explained to them why they show up to each other the way they did. We didn't do the rest of the work, but that's key, especially somebody through a lifetime of childhood.
Absolutely. It just makes it so much more accessible for people, right? They're like, okay, yeah, I got this. I can figure this out. I know a way around it now. And
Right.
that's
And the thing is we never get our own manual, our self manual of
nice.
operation. We're just sort of thrown into this life and said, here, figure it out. Go on your way and figure it out. Right.
Yep.
And then there are people like ourselves who are in constant seeking of understanding and wanting to know more. And sometimes we're lucky enough we do get to figure it out. And sometimes we get to share that with others, which is what I want to do. But I have to say, since I had my health challenges, and it really made me embrace the work even more in this system, it's been like one of the most freeing experiences I've ever had, because I don't have to take things personally anymore. I don't have to, make it about me and, they're doing this to me. It's like, that's just who they are. That's how they're designed. And it doesn't have anything to do with you. And the thing about the rishis, the only thing that really makes you unique is your personality. Because whatever your doshic makeup is, the rishis already figured that out. It's all written. It's all available. And the thing that makes us different is our personality, which is our breath, which is connected to source, which is our divinity, which is where we get all of our wisdom from. Because without breath, there is just a corporeal organism here, right? So that's the beauty of doshas. When you understand that, you have so much more freedom from not having people shame you and blame you for exactly how you're designed.
All we can be is ourselves, right? At the end of the day.
Right. And not have to apologize. That's sort of where the work came from, is I was sick and tired of women apologizing for themselves, for being exactly who they were, and there was nothing wrong with them.
Yes, absolutely. Love it. So I know you have an offer to make. So tell me a little bit about the offer that you're making to the community here. What do you got?
Oh, well, I have a dosha reading that's available. It's usually $397. And I dropped it down to $197. And for the first 10 action takers, it's $97.
Nice.
$97. Nice. And it's an hour reading. And you'll get to leave with a recommendation of some aromatherapy, some herbs, some kitchen spices, and any blocks that you may be experiencing or having to confront. Because while we're doing the conversation, there's usually a download in it for me to share with you.
It's funny how that intuition thing works, right? You're like, and I'm having a download.
Yeah, and it's not ever a choice, right? Like whoever needs to hear whatever it is, that's always been my prayer since I was 19. Use me as a channel of healing for whatever someone needs to hear. Use my voice as your instrument.
Absolutely. Now that one, do they reach out to you on Facebook to get that? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they can reach out to me on Facebook and Messenger, or they can email me at Christine Miura, my name, at gmail.com.
Awesome. Okay. And then you've also got an offer for them to basically sign up for your list to learn more, correct? Right. Awesome.
And you have that, right? You're putting that
I just dropped it here.
Awesome.
Let me put that in the chat as well.
Thank you. Are there any questions, or do we have time for questions, or we're done?
Oh gosh, hang on one sec. Not questions specifically, but we do have a couple of things. So Sylvia said, yeah, you seem to be describing me pretty good. And then her and Zima both said that they are completely unable to drink coffee. Neither one of them can do coffee. That makes them sick, gives them headaches, makes them want to throw up. And yeah, it's like, okay, yeah, But coffee is one of those things, right? It's really strong.
Yes.
In my experience, like you can either get addicted to it or you can't do it at all. And there's no in between.
Right.
Particularly.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Coffee really works for kaphas because it's a stimulant and they need to be stimulated because they tend to be lethargic in nature. So I have to say, I do love a cup of coffee, but I can't drink it every day.
No, I love coffee. It does not like me at all. So I'm in that other camp of the, yeah, I'm not doing coffee.
It's good you're not, because it's not great for you.
No, yeah, it's not for everybody, right?
Right.
And for those of us that it isn't, you go find that caffeine somewhere else. Tea or soft drinks or whatever it is.
Right, right.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you.
And yeah, any last words you want to share with the audience?
Sure. I invite all of you to get this access point to yourself, because it will give you so much peace and understanding about yourself, and you'll start an inwardly directed journey to understand what it is, what's good, what's not, and you don't have to ask anybody. And when we find more inward validation, all the other craziness just gets to stop. And that's what gives you that first step to finding peace and happiness.
Yeah. It's kind of a miracle that way, isn't it?
Yeah, we stop giving away our power, and we own it and embody it. And then when you start doing that, you get to heal other people. That's the nature of being a healer. So.
Yes, please, more of that. So thank you so much. And
I appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll see you in the group. And I'm sure we'll chat otherwise. So,
okay.
Okay.
Thanks. Bye.